Hey guys, it's MusicTechHelpGuy, and today let's do something maybe a little more off the cuff. In this video, I'm going to try and build a string-based beat just using live loops and quick sampler. And, you can get your samples and loops wherever you want. I'm going to use Splice for this. And like I said, specifically, I'm going to try to build just a string beat without using any sort of like actual string instruments. I'm just going to be using samples and loops that I find in Splice. You can try finding them in Logic's loop library. Now, I haven't done any prep work for this offhand, but I have already found a string loop that I kind of like here. It says BPM 100 E melody 12. Let's see what that sounds like. Cool. So I'm going to drag this in. You can actually drag your samples directly onto the track headers area here, and then you can load things directly into various sample instruments. So I'm going to use Quick Sampler. I'm going to use the optimized mode. And what this does is it creates an instrument track for me. Now the point here is to use loops and samples differently than they're presented, to do something original with them. You know, anyone can just drop a loop or a sample in and use it as is, but let's do something more interesting with it. So if it hasn't already loaded this up in slice mode, go ahead and just click on slice, and you'll see what this does is it chops up the loop into different slices. So I think I'm going to just play around with the position of a couple of these. That one's got a little extra noise on the end, so I'm going to shorten up the slice position there. Actually, that one's better. It's longer. I kind of like this little part here. Let me just kind of slice that out and make it just real short. That's on A1. Cool. So I kind of like that idea. So in my live loops grid here, I'm just going to record right into one of these cells. I've got my tempo set to 90. I want to go a little bit slower. And the great thing about using loops this way with Quick Sampler is the MIDI notes are going to determine the timing. So you don't have to stick with the original tempo of the loop. You can kind of do whatever you want with it. So you just click here and then just play in whatever it is you want to play in. Okay, sorry if that sounded a little awkward. It's difficult to play with my screen capture because there's a lot more latency than you'd normally have. So let me go ahead and just snap all these to 16th notes. I'll hit backslash to trim them, and then shift backslash to get rid of any gaps. And then I think this can come up here. That was just a playing mistake in my end. Let's just trigger that scene. Let's select all of these, pull the velocities up to the same value. Sounds a little disjunct, right? A couple things we can do. One, we can pull down the decay here. Essentially what I'm doing is shortening the decay and pulling down the sustain. And then I'll sort of create like an artificial release or tail on this by adding some reverb to it. I'm using Valhalla Vintage Verb, but you can use whatever reverb you like. Another trick I like to use when working with live loops is to create a quick little 8 or 16 bar loop here in the arrange area, or the main window or main area here. This makes sure that when you trigger a scene, that the playhead always jumps to the beginning of that cycle range, that loop range, and starts immediately. And then the other thing about working with live loops, if you're not that familiar with it, is you can press spacebar to stop and start, but you also want to remember command return, and command return will essentially stop the playback of all cells. So that's an important key command to remember. All right, so let's try to find some more string samples and loops here. I searched up low strings in Splice, and there's this one here in the cinematic hip hop kit. Cool, so let me just download that. I'll pull it into Logic, create a new quick sampler optimized instrument with it. Now the problem is this one's real smooth and fluid, so let's see if it actually latches onto the correct notes. I really only need this first note, so I'm going to pull this forward to get rid of that sort of swell in, and I'm going to shorten it quite a bit as well. Then what I'll do is pull down the sustain and decay a bit to shorten the tail end of that. So you'll notice there's a bit of a click on the front end of that. What you can do to correct this is just pull out the attack time a bit. This will fade in the front end. And I'm only fading this in by like 1.5 milliseconds, so it's like almost nothing. But it's just softening the front end of that note. And you know what I'll do is, since I'm going to use this reverb on a lot of things, I'm just going to create an auxiliary channel strip. But I'll set this to like bus 1. I'll move my reverb over to the aux track. I'll set the mix to 100%. And then I will create sends on these other tracks to go to bus 1. Now notice that they don't match up. The key doesn't match up. I could either pull... It sounds like I need to pull up the string hit I just created, or I need to pull down the original idea I had. So let me make this lower. I'm going to take the first one and pull it down a half step. So in the pitch module here, you can pull the coarse tuning down. Cool, so it sounds like it's working out all right there. Now what I want to do is I want to transform this string hit into a few different notes. But let's first see what those notes actually are. I'm going to pull up tuner. Actually, it's under metering here. Metering, tuner. And let's see what note that is. Looks like it's D sharp or E flat. So I'm going to think of this as the key of D sharp or E flat minor. You know what, just to make it simple, if flats are kind of difficult to follow, let me pull this down another half step. I'll pull this one, the hit, down a half step, and I'll pull my other loop down 2 half steps. Let me do that. There we go. So now I'm just in the key of D, or D minor. So I'm just going to record a single note here. Looks like it's pretty much on time, but let me just go ahead and quantize that anyway. Now what I'm going to do is bounce in place this cell. So if you click on it and press Control B, you can bounce this in place. So I'm just going to call this string hit D. And what this does is it creates an audio loop, or an audio cell based on that sample. The cool thing is now I can go back into Quick Sampler and I can tune this up or down or do whatever I want to do with it. If I'm starting on D here, I know I'm not playing the note D, but that's the note that's sounding. If I want to get a few notes in the key of D minor, I have to know what the D minor scale is. Well, it's D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D. So I'm going to go with D, and then I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 semitones. Or I could go down, I guess. I could go down to B flat, but I'll go up. So I could pull this up 7 minus the 1 semitones, which is going to be 6. It'll sound like this. And then what I could do is unmute that, hit Control B again, and I'll just call this string hit B flat. And now I have another one. Now let's do one. Let me just unmute this again. It's Control M to unmute and mute. I want to go from D down to B or down to C. So the original tuning was -1. Let's go down 2 more. D down to C. So down 2 more semitones. So let's go ahead and bounce that again. So I'll call this string hit C. Okay. So now I no longer need my main quick sampler there. I've got these 3 samples that are just all on different keys. Now I could drag all 3 of these into a sampler and make an instrument out of them, but because I said I'm only going to use quick sampler for this, let me do this a little bit of a different way. I'm going to pull these out here into the main window here, one by one. So I've got D, B flat, and C, and it's duplicated them too. You can see it's duplicated them. So let's just make these like 1 bar each. And then what I'm going to do is pull these together like so. Maybe put like a little fade on the end of them just in case there's any extra audio hanging out there. And then I'm just going to drag over these and hit J. It'll join them. Then I can take this file and drag it into Quick Sampler. And now I have my 3 notes. Sounds kind of wonky now, but let's get rid of these sample tracks here. And in the mixer, I'll make this instrument go to bus 1 as well. Let's see what that sounds like. Let's pull the whole thing down an octave. Why not? Let's make it go down to -12. Quantize those notes, set them all to the same velocity. Again, I'm just holding Option to do that. Cool, now we're getting somewhere. Let me pull this over to the second scene. I'm going to duplicate this over as well. That one's really cool. I don't know how I'm going to use that. Let me try throwing that in Quick Sampler. Turn on Slice mode. I think there's going to be a lot of layers here that we need to kind of take out. Let me soften up the tail end a bit, just like I've been doing before. Pull up another reverb here. This is one I love. If you don't have this, you should get it. It's only like $50. Shimmer from Valhalla, and I'm gonna pull the mix way up. Now, I have no clue if this actually matches the key of the rest of the song. And it does not. It doesn't at all. Let's go into Quick Sampler. Let's play around with the pitch here a bit. That's kind of cool. So let's record that in. Cool, I just used the tremolo to give those background strings sort of like a panning effect. Cool, so let's start playing with some drums. I know this is a string beat, but in order for it to be a beat, we need some drums. So let me look up some different packs here. Now that's actually really cool. I wonder if I just threw that beat under like my second scene here. I might end up chopping that up and doing something different with it though. I kind of like the sound of it. I just don't like that open hi-hat at the beginning. That little open hi-hat that's at the beginning of every repetition of it. So I'm going to drag this into Quick Sampler. And then what I'll do is, again, using slicing mode. We don't need all of these notes. Let's just check out just the beginning here. So we have our first hit. That's the sound I'm saying I don't like. Let me get rid of that little extra sound on the back end here. So you just double click to separate. Or actually just single click. And then what I'm going to do is just, again, pull down this decay to shorten this a bit. Cool, so I'm going to create two instruments for my drums. I can get rid of the original loop here. I'll mute these for now. And this first one's going to be like my kick and snare. So I'll say drums, kick and snare, and then duplicate this, and this next one's going to be my hi-hat. So let's pull this over here. I'm going to duplicate all this over one more cell as well. And then on my hi-hats, let's see what I can do here. Actually, instead of playing this in, let me just create a pattern cell here. I'll open up the step sequencer. Cool, let's see what those sound like with all of the drums in, kick and snare and hi-hats. I've got pretty much everything copied over to scene 3. Let's pull out the little ambient strings in both of these. Let's just keep that for the intro. And then let's do something different in scene 3, like give it a bass or some other sound. I think there was a kind of a cool bass one-shot here. And that was in the key of F. That's the great thing about Splice. It tells you what key you're working in. So I need this to be in the key of D. What I'll do is I'll pitch shift this down, but I do want to pull it into its own instrument. So I'll pull it into Quick Sampler here. It's just one note, so I don't think... Okay, so it's like doubled or something. Yeah, so it's just the same thing. So right now it's on the key of F. So to go down to the key of D, I need to go down 3 semitones or half steps. One thing I noticed is I don't want this to completely just keep playing. I'm not holding on the key there. So let me turn on gate here. Now, another thing you can do with these sample instruments is you do have some pitch control with the pitch bend. So what I'm gonna do is set like an octave range to my pitch bend. So if I go to bend range here and set this to 12, now I can kind of bend up and down by a full octave at a time. So what you can do is just right-click on the cell and choose Record into Cell. And what it should do is record that controller automation right into the cell. So if I show my pitch bend automation here, you can see that it remembers all of that automation that I just played in. Although sometimes it gets a little crazy on the loop. You can see here it's sort of looped over some of the automation. So I'm just going to pull this down so it just starts on 0, where it should start. Because remember, pitch bend is a bidirectional control. Let's add some heavy reverb to it, but let's also saturate it and sort of distort it. I'm going to throw Decapitator from Sound Toys on here. It's one of my favorite distortion plugins. Right here, I want to use this same bass instrument, but without all the modulation, just sort of like straight whole notes. All right, cool. Let me try throwing like a, I don't know, like a side chain, some side chain compression. I don't know if this is going to work, but after Decapitator on the bass track, I'm going to throw the compressor on here. I'm going to side chain the drum kick and snare track. There it is. Pull the threshold way down, pull the ratio way up, turn off the auto gain, and well, let's see what happens. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's see what it sounds like over here on scene 3. It's kind of cool there too, but the side chain is almost covering up the bass. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this bass hit track. One of them will say side chain. The other will not, because on that track I'm going to disable the compressor. So we'll pull that down. So let's just see where we're at here, starting from the beginning. Let's see what all this sounds like. I'm going to go ahead and close out the tracks area there. We don't really need to see that anymore. You know, those haunting strings, let's pull those down an octave. So they're +3 right now. So -12 would be down an octave. +3 would be 11, 10, 9. -9. Yeah, so I muted the string up here, the string hits, just Control M does that. So let's try doing something else with these last two little loop ideas here. Off screen, I tried playing around with this one, and I just couldn't get it to do anything that I wanted it to. So I'll save you this, you know, the agony of watching me play around with that one. But let's see what we can do with this one. Says it's an F minor, so if we were to drop this in Quick Sampler, I don't know so much about the second chord, but the first chord's kind of cool. Let's add some reverb to that. I'll try the tremolo on this as well for a bit of a pulsing effect. All right, cool. So let's finish this up. Let me just kind of flesh this out a bit. I'm gonna move these over. I'm gonna duplicate these over, just holding Option. First scene, I'm gonna delete those sort of background strings. And then for scene 5, I think I'm gonna make this just the kick, hats, and the bass. So it'll be like a more exposed section where the strings aren't in. Now, if you wanted to create additional sections, you can do that on your own time, but I'm just going to kind of leave it there. But one thing I'm going to do for an ending is I'm going to pull in the string hit, and I'm going to pull in the drums, the hi-hat, actually not the hi-hats, and the bass. Duplicate these over. And together, these just sound like this. I'm just going to pull out all these notes except for the very first note. On the drums, I'm going to pull out all of the notes except for the first note. And then on the bass, I'm going to pull the note in a bit. So we could even add something else to this, maybe the opening string idea. On this last one, I just want one of these notes here. So this is like the actual ending, scene 7. And then off screen, I just added a couple little risers here. This is a riser up to scene 3, and this is just sort of a white noise crash. And the great thing about working in live loops is you can trigger these scenes in any order you like. You can sort of build your song or build your beat out of sequence, and then arrange it in any order you like. And there you go. That's a string-focused or string-centric beat, just using loops and samples, using Quick Sampler, and using live loops. So as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. Thanks for the support, and thanks for watching.